Hello, welcome to another Pauper video. We're talking Poison Storm. This deck is sweet. Creatureless Infect based on Infectious Inquiry here to draw 2 cards. Each opponent loses a life and 2 life and gets a poison counter. And I've made a couple of minor tweaks since my last video, and I ended up with a full 10-0 trophy. So that is what this league is going to be. We don't have a live league. We're going to be going over exactly what happened using the replays. We get to see why this specific list is just overperforming. It's awesome. So what I did here was in the main deck. Previously I had Teachings and I had 2 Prologue to Phyresis. What I decided was I really needed more Weather the Storms. Why did I need them? I needed them against Burn. But really, Breath Weapon does a very similar effect. It's going to be wiping the table versus Burn, giving us a lot of time. So I decided to pre-board versus Burn because I decided I was starting to sideboard out the Prologue against Burn. So now I just have the 4 Infectious Inquiry as the only poisons in the main deck. Obviously, this can cause issues where sometimes you don't poison them and you'd end up losing to something like Blue. But we have more Prologues and Bring the Endings to support it in the sideboard, plus Deep Analysis to just go over the top of Blue decks. So I'm not really that concerned. And then this deck is relying on Lotus Petal for speed with just 18 lands, but Lorien Revealed is part of the mana base. And Lotus Petal is really awesome because if you just have a depletion play, you could petal out a Pentad Prism or Everflowing Chalice, and it gives you tons of Storm for Weather the Storm and tempoing. Other than that, I'm on 1 Forest here because I want to be able to more easily cast Weather the Storm and Moment's Peace out of the sideboard. And we got 3 Steady Progress. So people talked about playing Thirsting Roots again, but I think Steady Progress is actually quite good because we're powering out our big mana rocks with Everflowing Chalice and Pentad Prism. So we end up being able to more highly cast this card and draw more cards and just keep chaining and chaining and chaining and going off that way. So the main deck change has been Lotus Petal, as I talked about. That does add a lot of price to the deck, but you know. And then Breath Weapon has just been a super crazy good card. It really makes you good in game 1 versus fairies, and obviously it's really good versus Burn. So in the sideboard here, I've got 2 Deep Analysis to bring in versus blue decks because it just goes over the top of them. Any decks where we have tons of time. Prologue to Phyresis as an additional poison versus blue decks. Bring the Ending or more anti-counter magic, really. Seal of Doom is an interesting one, and it's specifically good against the Boros Glitters deck, or even the blue-white Glitters deck potentially, because you can just play it out, and they're forced to either not play Glitters at all, or if they do play the Glitters out, you can just, for 0 mana, pop it. And this allows us to continuously tap out and do our thing while developing. Here we have Moment's Peace, which is really bringing in versus something like Bogles or Heroic. Otherwise, I'm not wanting to bring it in. Slivers or something like that. But both Burn and Boros Glitters are just too strong to try to rely on Moment's Peace. What's interesting is that I think that Boros Glitters actually basically can't beat Poison Storm, if they don't have a creature that has a Glitters on it, and that's why I think Seal of Doom is better there. And then over here is Serrated Arrows. This has been a card people ask a lot about, but I really love this card. It's extremely good versus fairies, and any sort of deck that's slower, that's just trying to get creatures on the table and get you there eventually. So like I feel like it's very good versus Terror, although Moment's Peace is also quite good versus Terror. But Serrated Arrows, you can put an arrowhead counter on their creature, continuously proliferate it until it's super dead, and continue to get back your arrows. And as a 4-drop, Fairies has a really hard time countering it. So that is the deck. If you have any questions, please let me know. Make sure to leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. Obviously, like and subscribe. That's awesome. If you want to learn how to pilot this deck, check out the Patreon, which is patreon.com/kalikaiz. And there is a sideboard guide for this list. I will be updating it from the previous one with Lotus Petal to this one as of the video recording. So you'll be completely up to date. It doesn't cost very much, and I definitely put out a sideboard guide every month for any given deck, or if it changes drastically. And then we've got the reminder to check out cardmarket.com, the largest seller of Magic the Gathering cards in Europe. A nice sponsor of this video, who is a good spot to get a battle box going for you and bring your stuff to FNM. I definitely want to bring this to FNM/Thursday night Magic over here. It's just so fun to play, so we'll see how it goes. And I will see you in the matches. We're here in match 1 versus Bong0411, who I wasn't sure what they were going to be playing against, but this hand specifically is not keepable as it has no lands. You could go Petal, Pentad Prism, but you have nowhere to go from there. So we take a mulligan. Now this hand kind of showcases why Petal is really good. We have a couple of options here. With the Sappers and Scary, we can play that out, cycle for an island, and then cast Experimental Augury on turn 2. So this is a keepable hand, and I think putting back the Deep Analysis or the Weather the Storm makes sense. And I choose to put back the Deep Analysis because I'm furthest from casting that, and if we are against burn, we want to keep the Weather the Storm. Our opponent takes 6, we lead on Sappers and Scary. They lead on Island, so I'm a little concerned about Spell Pierce here, but I feel like I can't play around it. So we're going to cycle for an island, play the island, grab it, and then we're going to cast Experimental Augury. We find Lorien Revealed, Pentad Prism, and an island. So the options are probably the Pentad Prism or the island, but I think versus a blue deck, you probably want to make your land drops, so let's see what we grabbed. I ended up grabbing the Pentad Prism. That sort of makes sense. If they do tap out, we can go Island, Petal, play the Pentad Prism, tap this, play blue, have steady progress, and then we have tons of really, really good mana. So our opponent's going to cycle Lorien Revealed for an island on our end step. Their turn. Plays an island. That's a little scary for me. Taps 2 mana. So I was expecting Augur of Bolas, and they play Modern Age. So that's really good for me. And I find a Hickory Woodlot off the top. Play the Lotus Petal. We're going to go Pentad Prism. Play the Hickory Woodlot, that way we can proliferate onto it, and just go Sappers and Scary, Pentad Prism, and steady progress. So now we're looking for a time to cast a Vivisurgence Insight. We proliferate all of our stuff, draw a card, finding an Infectious Inquiry. So next turn we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. We can go tap, and make a black and cast Infectious Inquiry. So we're versus a blue deck. We really need to find a spot to cast the Infectious Inquiry. And it's important to actually cast it early because we only have like 19 or 20, I'm not really actually sure, poisons. They discard a Snap, and they're going to go for Preordain. Let's just get rid of this. They go top with the Preordain. They play another Modern Age. So it looks like they're looking for white mana. They're going to go ahead and discard. Discarding a Dawnmare Cleric. We draw a Peat Bog. So I feel like the best play is to just slam the Infectious Inquiry here. And that's what I choose to do. Drawing into Weather the Storm and Deep Analysis. And we're going to pass the turn. Our opponent, they've got the Modern Age triggers. One of them flips. Okay. They discard an island. Tapping 2 mana, 3 mana. They're going to invoke a Muldrifter, still looking for that white source. Finds a Chancery. They pick up the island and pass the turn. Oops. Alright, so we're doing a bunch of stuff. I accidentally skipped through the turn. But we played Vivisurgence Insight, draw a bunch of cards, found Lotus Petal, Experimental Augury, Chalice. We get the Chalice into play as soon as possible because Chalice is a mana rock that continues to grow. Whereas if you're using the mana off the Pentad Prism, it actually will go away on you. So you want to get these Chalices going as soon as possible. Our opponent, they flip another Vector Glider. They're going to attack for 2. And then they play a Muldrifter for full price. So my turn, I draw an Experimental Augury so we can just kind of go off here. We're going to start with the Augury because it adds mana to this Chalice and grab the Vivisurgence Insight for sure. We're going to proliferate onto all of our stuff. Now I have 5 mana available. I can just cast the Vivisurgence Insight from this. Okay, slam the Insight. We draw Weather, Island, Lorien Revealed. We proliferate. One thing someone told me was like, yeah, you probably don't have to keep proliferating once you're at 6. That makes sense. So here we can go, we have 4, 5, 9 mana. So 1, 2, and then cast that Lorien Revealed. We can still cast Weather after that. We're going to tap this, use the blue, cast the Lorien Revealed. We find an Experimental Augury. So the option is to cast Inquiry or the Augury. I think it makes sense just to cast the Augury here. We don't really need the Weather Storms that are in hand. cast the augury, we find a pentad prism and a woodlot, or an island. So take the prism, proliferate onto all of our stuff, and now I can go ahead and cast the prism here, and then instead of casting Weather the Storm, I can just pass the turn. I'm gonna go ahead and discard. Discarding a land I think is fine. We have tons of mana already. Don't really need the Weather the Storms, but who cares? Don't need the land either. We're not going to be drawing. We're not going to be not drawing lands. We draw tons of cards. Our opponent's getting in for 6, putting us to 10. Plays or cycles an Ash Barrens, finding an island. Preordain for the opponent. They go top. Plays a familiar, so now they could cast Prohibit. They snap their Muldrifter. Untap their lands. 4 mana. Okay, it looks like they're going to hard cast a Muldrifter. They play the Muldrifter, they go to 7 cards and draw. So now my turn, I probably can kill them this turn. They're currently at 6. So tell me if this is a combo, right? Is Poison Storm a combo deck? That's what I've been arguing about with people. We're just going to tap the non-blue mana and float a green in case we like sort of fizzle. We cast the Infectious Inquiry. Now I tap the Everflowing Chalice for mana. I'm going to cast the Deep Analysis. I find Steady Progress over here. So we can cast that. And then put mana back on our Pentad Prisms. If we can find 2 more poisons, they'll be dead. Draw. Okay, everything's been proliferated. We did not find the poison. I go for Deep Analysis. I find Vivisurge and Insight way over here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. So we probably... Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we don't use the Pentads completely, we can cast the Vivisurge and Insight right now. We're going to go for that, trying to find that close. 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana. Draw 3 cards. We proliferate, but we ended up not finding any poison, so I just decide I'm at 5. I'm going to go ahead and Weather the Storm here for a lot. Zoop. There's the Weather the Storms. We go back to 29 and discard a bunch of tap lands that are non-blue. Later in the game, you basically want to be prioritizing the non-blue lands, or making blue land drops. Our opponent preordains. They're pretty dead, but we don't have that much going on. They get in. Plays a familiar, evokes a Muldrifter, and this is an interesting spot, right? They're going to go for snap on Muldrifter. So I know that if I Breath Weapon here and they don't have a counter, then I probably can resolve this Lorien Revealed. So I decided to go for Breath Weapon to see if they will have the counter. Because if they snap, they'll have tons more mana and be more likely to have stuff going on. So I'm just going to Breath Weapon and try to force their hand. And they don't have anything. So snap fizzles, they play a Chancery, and it's my turn. They probably should have played the Chancery before they went for the snap, so they would have extra mana. We just have the Contentious Plan in hand. So if I cast that and it resolves, we win. It resolves, and we win. Okay, post board here, we are taking out the 2 Breath Weapons and the 2 Lotus Petals, as well as all the Weather the Storms. We're bringing in the Deep Analysis, the Prologue, the Serrated Arrows. Okay, so we brought in the 2 Deep Analysis, the Prologue to bring the ending, and all the Serrated Arrows, cutting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that works exactly. All right, game 2 versus Familiars. We're going to be on the draw. And this hand is fine. We have plenty of proliferation. We have a counterspell if necessary, and we have plenty of land drops. So we're going to keep 7. Our opponent plays a Plains and passes the turn. We're just going to Scary and pass the turn, in case we need to bring the ending. On our end step, opponent cycles for an island. Cycles for an island again. Plays a Chancery. And picks up their Plains. Now it's my turn. So I could... This is a cool spot here. We probably want to lead on the Peat Bog, because the green doesn't do anything for us now, but the Peat Bog casts our poison spell. And getting the Chalice into play is important, so we can use the Lotus Petal to go Scary into Chalice, Petal, Contentious Plan. I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana untapping with on the next turn. Oh, I decided not to do it. Okay, fair enough. I felt like I guess at this time, I did not feel like it was necessary. I think I was trying to save proliferation for when our opponent was going to... So I decided to Chalice at this point. Still holding on to the Lotus Petal here. I don't think that was absolutely necessary. We would have been able to do a lot more on this turn by doing that the other turn. Our opponent plays an island, Sunscape Familiar, and I decide that this is the appropriate time to bring the ending. Our opponent has a counterspell as well, and the Familiar resolves. So now I can Lotus Petal, and then I'll have 4 mana. Decide to go for the Chalice right away. This gives me mana back with the Chalice. We're going to go Petal for Island, Petal for blue, Chalice on 1. Then we'll have 6 mana. You can just cast, and here you want to prioritize the blind draws, so casting Contentious Plan makes the most sense. Tapping the Chalice, and then proliferating. I think we would have been in a better spot if we had done that previously, but we end up drawing the Infectious Inquiry, so now we can tap for black, tap the Chalice, draw. And if I'd drawn a Pentad Prism there, I could have played the Pentad Prism by floating black and blue, and I could have gone black, blue, play Contentious Plan. But at this point, I'm kind of looking for another land. So we're going to Contentious Plan and see what our blind draw is. So you can tell at this moment, I'm kind of pinched on blue mana. This is my only blue source, so I think the correct play is to cycle for an island. I cycle for an island, play the island, and pass the turn. Our opponent's at 2 poison pretty early. We are able to sneak that Infectious Inquiry in. They cast a Deep Analysis targeting themselves, going up to 7 cards in hand. And my turn, we're just going to use the early proliferation first. I'm leading on my most expensive one, so they probably can't counter it. They can't currently kick a Prohibit. So now we have 8 mana from the Chalices and 4 other mana. I'm going to tap the Chalice for 3 mana. Okay, we're not doing that. Play the island. Leading on Contentious Plan here. That makes the most sense. They go to 4. They're not currently doing anything. Okay. We find a Vivisurgent Insight. So they could counter that if they have a negate. But I decide that I'm going to wait. I don't want to get hit by a negate necessarily on my big spells. I'm trying to resolve them. They cast a Preordain. They go top, bottom. Chancery, picking up an island. And that's it for them, so they pass the turn. We can end step these 2 Experimental Auguries and see if they want to respond to try to pinch their mana. They don't do anything, so we're taking the Deep Analysis here because this gives us the ability to force through. And we'll proliferate onto our opponent and our stuff. Then we can cast another Experimental Augury, finding a Vivisurgent's Insight. So look at all these card draw spells that we have. 3, 6, 9, 10 worth of card draw here. And we can pretty much cast all of it, but we only have 4 mana worth of blue. So we probably want to lead on the Deep Analysis on the next turn. They're at 6 poison, and they discard to hand size. We draw a Pentad Prism, which is extremely good. If this resolves, it gives us another 2 blue sources. So we're going to go ahead and cast the Pentad Prism. They don't counter, so indicating to me they probably don't have a counter whatsoever. I have so much mana for my Chalices, I'm just going to tap the 1 for mana and cast a Deep Analysis to start. They still don't do anything. We draw another Pentad Prism. We can cast another Pentad Prism. We have even more blue sources now. I decide to flash back the Deep Analysis, seeing if they'll bite. They still don't do anything. So now I'm going to cast the Serrated Arrows that I drew. And then try to cast... We're going to go for the Lorien Revealed. Still trying to get them to bite and counter something. Because if they don't have a counter, it's just good for me. And they're finally going to counter on the Lorien Revealed. So now I can ping their Familiar, and the only thing this Vivisurgent's Insight gets countered by is a negate. We're going to cast Vivisurgent's Insight, making the Familiar an 0-1 now. They go to 7 poison. And we have another blue source, but not enough to actually go off. So to me, it makes the most sense to play. We're going to play the island, prioritizing the blue mana, and then just go ahead and play a Pentad Prism and pass the turn. Our opponent Nature's Chance the Serrated Arrows on end of turn. Interesting they were sitting on that. They Deep Analysis, going to 17 life, 8 cards in hand. Deep Analysis again. Deep Analysis again. Cycles. Plays the island, so they... Okay, they play Modern Age, so they're fully tapped out here. And they discard a Chancery, so they just didn't have anything. And we have 2 draw 3s that both proliferate, so we're probably just going to steamroll them here. I'm tapping my non-Chalice mana to make sure that I just get that mana back right away. And actually we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rocks. So this is a 0 mana spell. That's gotta be a combo. Synergy combo? I don't know. All right, they go up to 8 poison. We get all of our stuff back. I stopped proliferating onto my lands to save time. I'm just gonna tap my Chalice, slam another Insight, and we draw the Inquiry, which now we can just go ahead and float a black, cast the Inquiry, and bam, they're dead. Pretty easy round 1. Familiars kind of folds to this kind of deck. Most of their stuff doesn't work against it, but if you are playing Familiars, you want to be focusing on countering these cards, the biggest draw cards. If you can flounder them and have them only just straight up cantripping, then they will probably run out of steam and lose. So that's round 1. Let's get to round 2. All right, we're here in round 2 versus Ichitaro. So I figured they'd be on fairies or red, and this hand has a really good Weather the Storm early, and double Pentad Prism is nice, so I'm going to keep it. They do lead on Great Furnace, plays Tomb Raider and gets in, so we're under a lot of early pressure. I decide that I need to lead on the Woodlot in case I have to spam Weather the Storm early. Plays a Mountain, Reckless Lackey, that's 3 damage this turn, and an Epicure, so that's 4 total damage this turn. They slam in, put me to 16. And 14. So now I'm almost dead. I play the Sacrifice Scary past the turn, holding up to Weather the Storm. So my best possible draw is some sort of proliferation, so we can go Prism, Proliferate. And hoping that they don't draw a Bushwhacker, of course. They play a Tomb Raider, so now it's 6 damage coming in, putting me to 8. They're getting in. We go to 13 and then to 8. The first strike is kind of annoying to step through the phases. All right, Chain Lightning puts me to 5. So here I can Weather the Storm and go up 9 life, or I can pass. And then I can go Pentad Prism, Lotus Petal, Weather the Storm, which is 12 life. So I decide to keep. And we're gonna play the Pentad Prism again, play the Woodlot, play the Lotus Petal, and we're going to Weather the Storm to gain 12 life. They only have 1 card in hand, but they do have 6 power on the table. We are at 17. So they're going to put me to 11 again. Pretty tight. They have 2 cards in hand. Final Lotus Petal. So I think at this point we have to just cast Infectious Inquiry and pray we find some proliferation. Inquiry. Find a Weather the Storm. I go for Lotus Petal. And then I sacrifice my lands and cast the Insight. This will give me 2 mana afterwards. Okay, put them to 2 poison, get mana on my prisms, play the land. We're going to play the Chalice. This is Storm 4. I got really lucky having a Weather Storm in hand. And now we're going to gain 15 life and pass the turn again. So we go up to 25? 24. Okay. Our opponent's once again going to attack for 6, but now it's 7. They found another Reckless Lackey. So 7 damage. I find another Chalice, so I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to tap, go Steady Progress. So I get mana back on my Pentad Prisms. So I'm set up for the next turn with lots of mana again, and I have a Weather the Storm in hand. But I think, okay, we do pass the turn. There's something to be said about cycling for an island to play the island, so I just have more lands in play. But maybe just that didn't make sense to me at the time. We get in for 6. I can go to 11 again. Or no, it's 7, so we're going to go to 10. Oh man, it's tight. They have 3 cards in hand. And they're sacrificing the Lackey, going to 4 cards in hand with a treasure token, playing a land. So they must just have nothing going on. So what do we got here? Decide to lead on the Inquiry. Trying to not use the Woodlot in case I draw into something. Play the Island. Decide to go for the Deep Analysis. Storm is 2. Did not find anything again. So we're probably just going to have to Weather the Storm here. Gaining 9 life. Very, very tight game at the moment. We're back up to 17. Go to 13 off of a 4 damage Galvanic Blast. Our opponent is going to loot. Looting away a mountain. Or not looting. Oops. They get in. Okay. So now they have tons of stuff in play. We are just going crazy. Ah! I'm digging really hard trying to find a breath weapon, but we end up, sorry about that, I clicked the speed 2 times. But we were basically dead here to their board, so I end up casting Vivid Surgeon's Insight, floating mana, making these bigger and bigger, and then we found a Contentious Plan to make our chalices bigger, an Augury to keep it going, getting bigger, Contentious Plan again, another Augury, another Contentious Plan. We just kind of just got there, and we found the breath weapon eventually, but they were already dead. So sorry about that. We'll get into round 2, and I'm definitely not going to skip through the turns. When I say round 2, I meant game 2. And let's check out our sideboard plan. It is don't sideboard. I felt like this was as good as I could be versus mono red anyway. And we really can't keep this hand. It's sort of a trap. Like, what are we going to do? We're going to Pentad Prism on turn 2 and then have 2 islands in play and lose. So I'm going to mulligan. This hand is relatively keepable. We can maybe put back a Peat Bog. And that's the plan. So we'll lead on the Woodlot. They go Reckless Lackey attack. We're going to play the Woodlot, pass the turn. I'm trying to hold and build up to a big storm turn, basically. They play Synthesizer, finding an Implement of Combustion, plays land, plays the Implement and attacks for 1. We go to 18. I don't Weather the Storm, which is quite good. I play the Peat Bog and pass the turn. Now I can weather for 12 on one of my turns if I want to. Well, assuming I find another blue source. They Kuldotha Rebirth. Scary. And the other thing is that I kind of want to save the Lotus Petal for a breath weapon if I can find it. They play a Tomb Raider. So now they're going to attack for 3. We go to 15. It's just very, very tight. This is turn 3. We've lost a quarter of our life total. I decide to risk it for the biscuit. I'm playing the island and passing the turn. If I can get to the next turn, I can gain 15 life maybe. Just need to find some sort of like a Pentad Prism, and then I can really go off. They're getting in, so they did not have the Bushwhacker again. I figured if something bad happened, I could weather the storm. Okay. Anything going to go bad here? They have 3 cards in hand. All right, my turn. I decide to go for the end step Experimental Augury in case they want to play some burn spells. So the choice is Deep Analysis, Augury, or Scary. I think at this point I probably want to take the Augury. There we go. Take the Augury. Make my lands bigger again. I'm really looking for a Pentad Prism. We're going to Augury again. No, Contentious Plan to start it off. Okay. Find a Lotus Petal, so now I have even more blue sources, and I can definitely get to the point where I'm going to be able to weather for a big amount. Okay, the Contentious Plan resolves. I find a Lorien Revealed. Play a Lotus Petal. Play a Lotus Petal. And then I can just Weather Storm here, or I can burn my Lotus Petals with an Experimental Augury into a Weather Storm, gaining 18. And I find the Infectious Inquiry to get the poison going, which is quite important. So I'm taking that. And then we'll just play Weather the Storm, gain 18 life. And it's your turn. We're at 27 and they bolt us on end step. So they had to save the bolt and in order to not have it get negated by a Weather Storm. They crack the Synthesizer, finding a Pyroblast, which they can't use. They play an Implement of Combustion and attack. We're at 18 now. And now we can just jam the Infectious Inquiry and see what happens. Or we can play the Vivid Surgeon's Insight, but I think we need to just Inquiry. Oops. We find a Pentad Prism, play that out, and now I'm holding up in Breath Weapon in case they have a Bushwhacker. So if they do Bushwhacker here, I can just spew this Pentad Prism to Breath Weapon them. Okay, they're attacking. We're currently at 15. I'm holding up in Weather the Storm and Breath Weapon. Plays a land, 2 cards in hand. Plays a Blast Runner. Now I'm like, this Breath Weapon is going to be amazing. We find a land. Can definitely play that. So here we have Vivid Surgeon's Insight into Breath Weapon into Weather the Storm. But they might have a Pyroblast. They probably don't. I decide to pass the turn so that I can respond to a spell with Breath Weapon. They're going to... I also just wanted to see if they were going to Bushwhacker. So at the beginning of combat, we're going to Breath Weapon here. They're going to crack their Lackey, draw a card. So it's not entirely a mega for 1. They get a little bit of value back there. Now they have no board. So if they can't put anything on the board, this should be relatively easy. They play an Epicure, 2 cards in hand. I probably should have responded to the Epicure with the Weather Storm here, so that I did not lose to Double Bolt. Did not respond to the Epicure though. So this is a sketchy position. If they have Double Bolt, I'm probably gonna die. Cast the Vivid Surgeon's Insight. So here, once again, I'm using my raw draw spells before I use my card selection. Let's see what we draw. They go for a Pyroblast. They did have Pyroblast in hand. So now I'm not dead to double Bolt. So I'm going to Augury, finding another Insight. I'll take that. Proliferate a little bit, and then cast a Weather the Storm, gaining 12 life, and passing the turn. So 18 life, they have a Bolt and an end step, and 1 Epicure in play. I feel like I'm gonna win. So let's just fast forward through this turn. They go Galvanic Blast, attack me, putting me to 10. So now I'm pretty much free reign. They have no cards in hand. We can lead off by tapping all the black mana and these 2 blue to cast the Vivid Surgeon's Insight. That'll leave us with 1 black floating in case we find an Inquiry. And we find Petal, Lorien Revealed, Insight. So let's see if we can cast I think we can cast the Insight here. So now we have 3, 4, 5. We can cast the Vivid Surgeon's Insight again. Finding just lands here. And then we want to play the Scary to get that onto the table. Play the Lotus Petal. And I play the Experimental Augury. Playing the Lotus Petal there was not necessary because I didn't necessarily know I was going to grab this Weather Storm. I should have saved the Lotus Petal, just cast the Experimental Augury, and then if I found Weather Storm, play the Petal for additional storm count. That was a mistake. I find Weather Storm anyway though, proliferate all my stuff, and cast a Weather Storm for a ton, floating 1, not floating, but keeping 1 counter on this Pentad Prism, and we're at 25. One has 1 card in hand and an Epicure. They attack for 1. We go to 24, plays another Epicure. They've got a lot of blood tokens. So the first thing we're going to do, once again, is cast... I guess we're going to go for the Contentious Plan first. Okay. But, you know, we want to just Contentious Plan and Lorien Revealed and stuff. Decide to tap all the black mana to cast the Infectious Inquiry. And I have Chalice and Pentad Prism. I can just cast the Chalice and then cast a Prism. And then I have 5 mana left over if I want to, and I can cast the Lorien Revealed. Tap the Chalice, use the Pentad Prism mana, draw 3, and pass the turn. They're currently at 7 poison. We have 24 cards in deck. Let's F6. They discard a land and get in for 2. Galvanic Blast putting me to 15. I have 1 Weather the Storm left in the entire deck. We're going to play the blue land, cast Inquiry again. And we find another Inquiry, and the last Weather the Storm. Cast another Inquiry. We find Pentad Prism. So definitely cast the Pentad Prism here. And now we have tons of mana. We're going to Deep Analysis, finding a Steady Progress, so we can cast that off of this, this, and this. And then it'll leave us with 3 mana afterwards. But actually they're dead, so didn't matter. Didn't need to use the last Weather the Storm. GG. We beat Burn 2-0. That's pretty sick. And we'll see you in round 3. We're here in round 3 versus Snisher. We are on the play, and this is a pretty solid hand, so I'm just going to keep it. We have a couple of options. If we do go for... So we're leading on the Bog, obviously. And then we're going to maybe Pentad Prism into something, or just cast the Infectious Inquiry on turn 2. Our opponent plays Abraded Bluffs, so we know that they are Boros Glitters. So in that case, I just need to get rolling. But I find the Experimental Augury, so definitely the plan here is to do what I call the best start of Pentad Prism into Augury. So here's the Pentad Prism in play, and then we can use it for blue, cast the Augury, and finding another Augury is good. And we're going to proliferate back onto here. Next turn we can Infectious Inquiry. Our opponent plays a Lembas, and they scryed top. My turn. So the first thing I'm going to do is cast the Infectious Inquiry, because I need to try to race them potentially. And I find a tap land, so I'm going to play that out. Opponent's turn. This is turn 3. They Glinhawk, picking up the Lembas. And I figured they're going to play the Lembas again, but they actually have all the glitters, making their Glinhawk a 4/4. That's strong, and we need to find a Weather the Storm. Find a tap land. So cannot cast everything. I go tap, tap. I'll have 3 mana left over. I can penta. So we're going to lead on the Experimental Augury here. Actually, okay, I recognize now. We have 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. So we can cast the Vivid Surgeon's Insight first, and then we'll have 4 mana. Then we can Experimental Augury looking for a Weather the Storm. So that maximizes our chances for this Augury to hit the Weather the Storm. 3, 4. We Insight. Proliferating. We did find the Weather the Storm. They go to 2 poison. And now we can... I decided that Storm of 3 facing all the glitters was not enough. So I was going to wait longer and try to use 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, try to get to like 15 Storm. Discarding the Woodlot since we already have one in play. Our opponent, I thought they were going to play the Limbus. They play a Synthesizer. Reveals a Novice Inspector. And they actually go for all the glitters, which is wild. So now they have a 10-10 flyer attacking us. But we do have the Weather Storm in hand. And I decided to go for end step Experimental Augury into Weather Storm going to 17. Alright, let's see what happens. Another Weather Storm off the top is huge. So we can tap our black and green, cast the Everflowing Chalice, then use a blue and the black to play Contentious Plan. They go to 4 poison. We have a Lotus Petal, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. We can cast the Lotus Petal and cast the Vivid Surgeon's Insight here, drawing a bunch of cards. We did not find another spell we can play, but we have enough mana to cast Weather Storm and play a land. So that's going to be the plan. Play the land, cast Weather Storm. Now we go up to 32, but they have a 12-12. And here they go for Lembas, Scry's bottom, rips all that glitters. So now we're facing down a 23-23. Okay. And we have 5 poison on them. So now I'm like, okay, I gotta find another Weather the Storm. So we are gonna just start playing our proliferations. And the Saprosan Scary I should leave in hand because if I find an untapped land, I can cast that. I can use it to use blue mana. I cast Vivid Surgeon's Insight. We draw 3 cards. Double Weather the Storm. So maybe I can survive against this 23-23 if they don't find yet another glitters, that is. So we're going to cast Contentious Plan. Our Chalice is getting bigger. We're running out of blue mana. I did not find blue mana, but I actually recognize that I can tap the Chalice, cycle the island, play an untapped island, then I'll have blue and blue from the island, and I can cast the Vivid Surgeon's Insight. Cycle the island. Cycle the Lorien Revealed for an island, I mean. Play the island. We have 3, 4 mana. Cast the Vivid Surgeon's Insight. We draw 3 more cards. And I was planning on casting Weather Storms, but you'll recognize here they're currently at 8 poison, so we actually can kill them because every time each of these only costs 1 mana since it proliferates back, and we have a bunch of poison, so we just go poison, poison, poison. You are dead. Sweet. Turn 6 through a 23-23. Can you believe it? Awesome. Okay, post board here versus Boros Glitters, round 3. So we decided to bring in the Seal of Dooms, the 3 Seal of Dooms, and cutting the 2 Breath Weapons and a single Lotus Petal. I feel like I'm fast enough to beat them if they don't have a glitters. Our opponent's going first, obviously, and this hand is sketchy, but we have Infectious Inquiry and Seal of Doom. We can also cycle for an island and cast Experimental Augury on turn 2, so I think it's actually relatively decent. So we are going to keep. They play an Abrasive Bluffs and pass the turn. We find a Saprosan Scary. We're going to play Peat Bog and pass. We'll go with Scary first. Okay, that makes sense. So the reason for the Scary first is turn 2 I can play Peat Bog and Augury for card selection. Our opponent goes Thraben Inspector, putting me to 18 with another Abraded Bluffs. Find a Lotus Petal. So there's a couple of options still, but I'm trying to bide my time. Our opponent plays a land and all the glitters. So now we have the Seal of Doom. We have the removal spell for it. And I'm going to go for end step Experimental Augury, finding a Vivid Surgeon's Insight. I forgot that I was going to do that, sorry. So now here, what are we going to do? Finding a Peat Bog. So I think we just have to Seal of Doom. Cycle Lorien Revealed for an island. Okay, we're using our mana off of the Peat Bog. Grabbing the island, tap the Sappers and Scary, play the Seal of Doom, and pass the turn. No reason to blap at this right now. They don't have protection for their creature as far as I know. And I just wanted them to not be able to do anything else. Okay, and beginning of combat, we blast it. We're currently at 14. We have Weather the Storm in hand. Kind of weak to a Pyroblast. They play a Gorilla Shaman. 3 cards in hand for the opponent. We have another Seal of Doom. I think the best thing to do is play the Infectious Inquiry here. And we have Pentad Prism. But they can kill it on 5 mana from their Gorilla Shaman. I decided not to go for that. Opponent's tapping and untapping, goes for the clue. Their turn. Plays a Rustvale Bridge. They get in for 1, putting me to 12. Plays a Novice Inspector. No draw. And then I'm going to go for the Pentad Prism. Then I can play Lotus Petal. I figured maybe they would try to use the mana on the Lotus Petal and not like mess with me. I'm going to try to cast a Steady Progress here, which they actually have a Pyroblast, unfortunately. So we're going to lose some of our lands most likely. And we end up having to, I'm going to go for Steady Progress again. Okay. And this one does not get pyroed. And then we'll just cast the Weather Storm. I was waiting to see if they would go after my Lotus Petal with the Gorilla Shaman to stop them from using the clue. But they decide not to go after it, and we Weather the Storm for 18 life. Alright, opponent. So they did not see that they could take out the Pentad Prism here for some reason. And they play Glinthawk, picking up a land. So now they can't kill the Pentad on their turn again. They get in for 2, I mean. Alright, we really need to find some blue mana. We find Sappers and Scary. We can play that. Pass the turn. I go for the Seal of Doom, it looks like, just in case they have Glitters. They play their tap land. And I decide to go ahead and kill the Gorilla Shaman so I can try to keep my Pentad Prism in play. They attack for 3. We go to 24. Find a Steady Progress, so I think that's the best card to cast here into a potential Pyroblast. They have it. So I pass the turn. Next turn we can tap these mana to Insight again. Unlikely they'll have a 3rd Pyro at this moment. Is Skyfisher picking up a land and pinging us for 1. Gets in for 3 damage. Okay. We find an Infectious Inquiry. That doesn't matter that much right now. Better to just try to get this Vivid Surgeon's Insight to resolve. And it does, luckily. Okay, they go to 3 poison. We have to get the Sappers and Scary into play as soon as possible. And then I'm going to go for the Inquiry. Try to get a bunch of cards in hand. I'm looking for Proliferation and did not find Proliferation. Our opponent, we're currently at 18. They attack for 5, play Galvanic Blast, putting me to 5 exactly. So this is a pretty scary turn. They have 1 card in hand. We have to either Weather the Storm or kill their creature in order to live here. So I decide to blow my land, play, let's see, Lorien Revealed, looking for Weather the Storm. Did not find a Weather. We did find a Seal of Doom. Okay, play the island. Untap mana matters here. We're going to play Everflowing Chalice Kicked. 3 mana. Play a Pentad Prism. And then we're taking the risky line here of playing the Seal of Doom and passing. So we lose to a burn spell, but not to a Glitters. If they Glitters on the Novice Inspector, we go to 1. So then we can't cast the Inquiry if that happens. They dusted us my 2 Pentad Prisms, which I was not expecting. And then we're going to go ahead and blow up the Core Skyfisher here. So we'll take 3 damage, going to 2. We can't cast the Infectious Inquiry. Find a Peat Bog. So we probably have to blow some of our mana. 3, 4, 5. Cast Vivid Surgeon's Insight, looking for Weather the Storm. We got really lucky and did find it. So now I can play the Peat Bog, and then Everflowing Chalice into... I decided to play Everflowing Chalice on 0 and just build up a storm count. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 artifacts in play, so all that glitters is +5, and I just go double Weather the Storm. Boom, boom. In case they had a burn spell in hand for some weird reason, I could play around that burn spell. So we're at 23. I think we are going to be able to take this one. That is 3 of our 4 Weather the Storms. And all of the Seal of Dooms are gone. Find an Experimental Augury. So I'm going to try to cast that and see if it resolves. Playing out my depletion just to get the counters on it here, because I'm focused on that. Find a Weather Storm or an Augury. I'm currently at 20. I decide to take the Weather Storm to be safe. And I have the floating black mana, so I can also cast the Infectious Inquiry. I go for the Deep Analysis first. Finding a Pentad Prism. I decide to play the Deep Analysis from the graveyard. Play an Everflowing Chalice. Now that I drew that, and then I can just Weather the Storm for 15. That is our last Weather Storm. So we're fully out of Weather Storms, fully out of Seal of Dooms, and now it's straight up race mode. Obviously, they only have 3 power in play. They play a land, and they get in. So they're flooding, which is really awesome for me, of course. Finding a contentious plan, so we've got to get this Pentad Prism in play first. We're going to use the black and green mana, trying to minimize the use of blue. We will contentious plan using the green mana since we have no Weather Storms left on the deck. And we have plenty of mana now. We can tap for 3, cast the Infectious Inquiry. Finding a contentious plan. Let's play that. I was trying to find a way to like force through a Pyroblast. They have 2 cards in hand. Find a Lotus Petal. Decide to tap for a bunch and cast the Deep Analysis. Looking for double poison, and we find an Infectious Inquiry, and that can't be pyroed. So we just cast it and they die. Bonk. We are 3-0, haven't lost a single game, and we're heading into round 4. All right, round 4 versus Zanuck, which I don't know what they're on, but we are on the play, and we have turn 2 Infectious Inquiry, so this seems like a keep to me. They keep 7, we play the Peat Bog and pass the turn. We go Island into Fairy Seer, going top bottom on the scry. So I want to just immediately Infectious Inquiry. That way every single card that I play is a threat. And we find Set Prison Scary and a Deep Analysis. Our opponent does not have a second untapped source. They get in for 1. We play Saprison Scary and pass the turn. Our opponent has another island, gets in, nothing. So we're just going to chill. We find this depletion land and play it and pass. We can force through with the Deep Analysis, but only when we can actually keep our lands alive. They play an Augur of Boros, finding a Spell Pierce. So now I have to play around a Spell Pierce, which I'm not really happy with. Gets in for 1. And they decide to flip a Ninja here, which is really good for me because now they're tapped out and I can land this Vivid Surgeon's Insight or Steady Progress. Go for land, tap for 5 mana, cast Vivid Surgeon's Insight. They're at 2 poison. I'm going to cast the Experimental Augury, looking for an artifact. I find the Everflowing Chalice, so I'll take that. I want to get ahead on mana versus a blue deck, basically. So we can play the Lotus Petal, cast the Chalice, and then I have the option of playing Petal into Weather Storm. I decide to take it. That makes it less likely for me to be able to cast a Breath Weapon later, but I'm way ahead on life. So now I can just focus on either casting Proliferation if they tap out, or just casting Deep Analysis to get ahead on cards. They get in for 3, going to 29, drawing card up to 7. My turn. We're tapping, playing Steady Progress, so they have to use a counter spell. They cannot Spellstutter Sprite a 3-drop. They decide to do nothing. We're proliferating. This makes our Chalice bigger. We can play the island. Now we have plenty of mana. We could just tap this, tap these 2, and draw 4 cards with the Deep Analysis if we want. We're going to float a green, casting Deep Analysis. Now I find a Pentad Prism. I know they have Spell Pierce in hand, so this makes me not want to just jam stuff. I could tap these and Deep Analysis right now, but that gets Spell Pierced. So I'm thinking about playing stuff, but I decide just to pass the turn and be safe. My opponent flashes in a Spellstutter Sprite on end step, plays another land, gets in, that's 5 damage. We go to 24, they draw a card up to 7. They flashed it in just so that they didn't have to discard a hand size, I guess. Plays an Augur of Boros, which ends up whiffing. So now, like, I really would like to get this Pentad Prism into play because it can cast both these Breath Weapons. We're going to attempt to cast Experimental Augury and see if they bite. They don't do anything. So we probably want to take the Saprosan Scary here. Decided to do that. You know, land drops are very important versus blue. Let's play the Saprosan Scary. A 3 mana. Still thinking about trying to get this Pentad Prism in play. Okay, we're going to go for it. Do they counter the Pentad Prism? They do not. So now we are like really stable and we can try to Breath Weapon them to the ground. I'm going to go for the Deep Analysis from the graveyard because I can still just spew off this Weather the Storm here. Decide to go for Lotus Petal and then casting Deep Analysis again. But another Pentad Prism. They didn't counter the first one, so we might as well try this one. They don't counter that one. Now I have the option of Weather the Storming for a lot of life. And I accidentally made red, but I just went for Weather the Storm. Gaining 21 life here, going up to 42. Well, life gain is actually relatively good against fairies, as long as you can get forced through all their counter spells, because they basically have no clock. Now they're attacking, they go up to 7 cards in hand. And we're looking for them to tap out to play a big spell, which they do, casting the Murmuring Mystic. They're at 5 poison right now, so we want to see if we can bait them into casting a Spellstutter Sprite so we can Breath Weapon. We're going to tap the green, cast a Contentious Plan. Looks like they're going to use the Spellstutter Sprite, so you want to Spellstutter Sprite in the battlefield, trigger on the stack, cast the Breath Weapon. We have double Breath Weapon here. We want to use the Lotus Petal because we don't want to blow the prisms. So I use the Lotus Petal for red, cast Breath Weapon. The Spellstutter Sprites die, the fairies die, the ninja dies, and our opponent concedes. Alright, so post-board here, we are considering our anti-blue package, which is really cool because we know that the deck was doing okay with 18 lands and no Lotus Petals. The Lotus Petals were really for extra speed. So I can cut all the Lotus Petals. And versus fairies, their clock is relatively slow, so I'm cutting 2 Weather the Storms. And I don't think I need to bring the endings, because I can force through. So I'm bringing in 2 Deep Analysis, Prologue, and 3 Serrated Arrows. I just love Serrated Arrowsing all my fairies opponents. So let's see how it goes. So this hand is a trap. We cannot get to Pentad Prism until turn 2. We mulligan. This hand is way better. So we're going to keep this, and I decided to put back the Prologue, which might seem weird, but I don't think that we need to rush out poison, and it's better for us to just have stable mana, especially having the arrows, the Deep Analysis, and the Vivisurgeon's Insight. Our opponent plays an island and passes the turn. We're going to play Woodlot and pass the turn. They cycle for an Aquifer, plays an island, so they're holding up Spellstutter Sprite or Counterspell. I play the Saprosan Scary. They flash in a Spellstutter Sprite on end step, and they're going to attack, and they end up ninjaing, which I completely did not even recognize that they had ninja'd here. But it makes sense to just get the Serrated Arrows in play, and I'll pass the turn. So my plan is to ping the Serrated Arrow, the ninja, making them incentivized to flip a different ninja, tapping low so I can use the Experimental Augury, and then kill their other ninja this next turn. As well as the arrows can like kill something else. I ping the ninja, trying to get them to do something. Also, like, minimizes damage. They're tapping. Now they're tapping 4 mana, indicating Okibi Shinobi, which actually is going to work out really badly for our opponent because we have 2 Deep Analysis to discard for our opponent. We just go discard the 2 Deep Analysis, untap, brutal, ping the Okibi Gang, playing the island, cast the Experimental Augury, Okibi Gang dead. We'll grab the Prism here, looks like. Yeah. Ping out the Okiba Gang. It is dead. So now the option is to play the Deep Analysis from the graveyard or cast the Vivisurgeon's Insight right now. And they decided that that was enough for them, and they scooped it up. They could not beat all of my awesomeness. We'll see in round 5. We're in round 5 versus Botsko. They're going to play first. We have a hand that has Weather Storm, Infectious Inquiry, Augury, fast stuff. I feel like this is a very keepable, good hand. They play an island, so I'm going to go ahead and lead on the Peat Bog, I think. Don't know what they're up to, but they cycle for an Aquifer. They could be Terror, they could be Fairies. Plays an Island. Just going to play out the Saprosan Scary and pass. Our opponent plays the Aquifer now, holding up Counterspell. We have plenty of lands, so we'll just play the land and pass. I'm hoping that they'll tap out for a 4-drop and I can start doing stuff. They play the Contaminated Aquifer. They're not doing any cantripping, any mental noting or whatever, so we can kind of see this is probably not Terror. So it's likely to be Fairies or some sort of Dimir control deck. I find another tap land, so I just play that, pass the turn. Our opponent, they're passing the turn. They're stuck on lands. So when your control opponent is stuck on lands, one of the things that you should be doing is trying to just make land drops and get card advantage that way. I decide to pass the Infectious Inquiry. They're going to counterspell. And we actually have a second Inquiry here, so I'm going to try to get that to resolve. Because resolving Inquiry versus a blue deck is very important. I'll play the Island. Now I could just pass here. Let's see. Yeah, passing makes the most sense. I'm playing around Spell Pierce this way. Okay, our opponent's turn. What are you going to do? Nothing. Still only on 4 lands. So I want to end step this Steady Progress. I decide not to. Okay, fair enough. We're going to play the Island. Try an Experimental Augury. Try to get all the proliferation back. They go Counterspell. So I'm going to Lotus Petal here. If they have a Spell Stutter Sprite, they're probably going to Spell Stutter this. They do have the Spell Stutter Sprite. Okay, so the Lotus Petal dies. But we're going to be able to cast a Steady Progress here. I feel like there's some sequencing issues. I probably should have cast a Steady Progress on end step on that previous turn. Steady Progressing here. We get our mana back. And it's turn 6. We have 6 lands in play. Can't really do anything else, but we could Weather the Storm. So it seems like a fine time as any to Weather the Storm and gain 21 life. All right, opponent. They're going to get in for 1. Let's see if they flip a Ninja. They are going to flip a Ninja. Okay, so we do have Steady Progress to get our mana online. And then we can just like cast Deep Analysis. And I'm deciding to cast a Steady Progress before playing the Peat Bog in case I draw a blue land. They go to 3 poison. We find a Chalice, which you can't cast into a known Spell Stutter Sprite. Decide to go for the Lorien Revealed. This way I have 2 mana left over in case they counter it, and I can just play out a Chalice. I find the blue mana that I was talking about, which is why I was holding this Peat Bog. Play this Scary. We can just go for the Contentious plan or not, and not play around Spell Pierce. I decide to pass. They flash in the Spell Stutter Sprite. Now they can Sprite and counter any 2-drop or higher, or under, I mean. Gets in for 3. They play a Fairy Seer. Now they can counter a 3-drop with a Spell Stutter Sprite. They've already used 2 counter spells, so I'm thinking they probably don't have another one. I decided to go for Chalice because if they do flash in a Sprite, they probably won't have another counter spell after that. We're going to go for Contentious Plan, try to make them use their Sprite. It only draws 1 card, so it's not that big of a deal if they counter it. They're countering here. And now we're going to just slam a big draw 3. Vivisurgent Insight. I was still keeping the Peat Bog in play, and they did not have more counter spells in hand. So they go to 4 poison. We find another Scary and an Everflowing Chalice. So we can play the Scary, cast the Everflowing Chalice off of our first Chalice, have 4 mana left over. Now we could Weather the Storm here or just try to draw some cards. Once again, we're not playing around Spell Pierce. I think if I just jam the Deep Analysis here is probably a mistake because I was playing around Spell Pierce the whole time and now I'm just like playing directly into it. All right, they didn't have it, so we draw 2 cards and pass the turn. That was a big turn for us, but now we don't really have any action. So this Deep Analysis resolving is pretty important. And this turn they're going to draw 2 cards. So they draw for turn and another card with the Ninja. Gets in for 5. We go to 29, a healthy 29. And they cast the Thorn of the Black Rose. So they'll be drawing another card. Draws for turn, for Monarch, I mean. Now, we're going to go for the Deep Analysis from the graveyard to start. See what our options are. Find multiple Inquiries. So we're going to cast one of the Inquiries. Draw 2 cards, put them to 5 poison. Finding a Prism is huge here, so we'll try to get that onto the table. No counter from our opponent, so I'm going to go for the Augury. No, we'll go for the Everflowing Chalice. Okay, yeah, that puts way more mana in play if the Augury does resolve. It's not necessarily guaranteed that it will resolve. And they have a Dispel, which I was not anticipating. So instead of Spell Pierces, they may be on Dispels. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana we can use. I decided to go for the Lorien Revealed, trying to draw a 2 mana proliferation. We didn't draw a 2 mana proliferation, we draw a Steady Progress. So we could just blow this Woodlot to Steady Progress here. And because these are all on one counter, that might be a good play. And I go for it. They don't have another Dispel. They go to 6 poison. We also now have an Everflowing Chalice that taps for 2, and we have a black mana, which we can cast the Inquiry here. We're currently at 24, so we don't really need to Weather the Storm. But I'm going to Infectious Inquiry, and once again, I am playing around Spell Pierce. Like, I don't know why I play around Spell Pierce sometimes, and then just ignore it, and then play around it, and then ignore it. Like, I feel like that's probably not what you want to be doing. They fetch on end step. So they, once again, like I said, they're going to be drawing 3 cards this turn. They play Murmuring Mystic. They pick up a land with a Dimir Aqueduct. So they're likely only going to have 1 counter spell to get in for 1,000,000. Draws a card for the Ninja, draws a card for the Monarch. And we find Contentious Plan. So I'm going to lead with that in case they want to counter. Get a ton of mana. So much mana in play, it's absurd. Now we have a double Insight, so it's pretty much GG. Even if they have counter here, we have another draw 3. We're going to lead on the draw 3 by tapping our lands instead of our chalices. They don't have anything. And we go for another one. We go for Breath Weapon to see if they'll do something. Sort of the rub-ins here. They flash into Spellstutter Sprite. Alright, and then we can just slam the Vivisection's Insight, and that will be the game. Alright, so post-board here, the same exact plan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards out. And we brought in the same cards. Brought in the, let's see, 2 Deep Analysis, Prologue, and the 3 Serrated Arrows. Bring the Ending still could be good, I just don't think you need to bring it in. You could cut more Weather the Storms on a Chalice, potentially. Alright, so our opponent's on the play. We're on the draw. We gotta watch out for that Okiba Gang again, and we have a really, really solid hand. Multiple land drops, Pentad Prism into Augury if they put their shields down. So we're keeping the 6. They go Island, Preordain. We will play out the Peat Bog first and pass the turn. Our opponent is going to go Island, keeping their shields up, okay? We have the option to play try to go the Prism, but I think we should just go Woodlot Pass. And that's what I do. They end step Brainstorm, plays a Contaminated Aquifer. This Pentad Prism is huge to my game plan, so I don't want to play it out just yet. I decided to go for the Island so that I could maybe end step an Experimental Augury. There's Brainstorming, and they actually whiff, so they're Brainstorm locked here. So we want to cast an Experimental Augury on end step. Trying to find blue sources or a raw card draw. I'm going to take the Deep Analysis here because it forces through them very well. Also, I want to try to find... So let me just think about this, how to say it. But versus blue decks now, with my plan of having fewer actual starting poisons, I want to try to find them as fast as possible and not like chain all my proliferation early, because I found a couple of times I actually did run out of poison and had to concede because I only had like 3 proliferations left and they're at 5 or something. We're going to cycle for an Island, just getting more blue sources. Play the Island. And then since they're missing land drops and discarding, or I'm just going to keep playing out my land drops, passing the turn. They cycle a Lorien Revealed. Now they have 4 lands in play, so I was wondering if they're going to play a Monarch or something. They play Augur of Boros. It finds Counterspell. So they'll likely hold up that mana. We have double Prism now, so now I'm like, okay, let's just jam the Prism. See if they counter the Prism. They decide not to. You kind of have to make them have no good options with this deck. And then we can play Deep Analysis, okay, into another Scary, which is awesome. Probably should have just cast a Steady Progress there, to be honest. They get in for 1, plays a Contaminated Aquifer and passes the turn. We have so many proliferations now. I decide to just flashback the Deep Analysis. Okay, now I think that they're probably going to have to bite on countering this Prologue to Phyresis. We have 9 cards in hand. I probably should have done something here. I'm sort of seeing that they have tons of mana in play. I think just casting a contentious plan would have been the right choice, but we're going to discard the island. I have tons and tons of cards going on. I have ridiculous amount of card draw in play. They pick up a land, so now I can end step the prologue. They have to counter it, most likely. So we can end step the prologue. They counter, and I'm floating enough mana to also cast a Steady Progress. They have a Dispel as their counter. I kind of expected them to have Counterspell, and they don't counter the Steady Progress. So everything gets proliferated again. We find an Inquiry. So I can just go for the Inquiry here. And if they have straight up Counterspell, I have to dig to try to find another way to counter or get them poison, because we only have 3 left in the deck after this. There's the Counterspell. So we're going to lead on the big draw spell. Nope, Experimental Augury, digging. Finding a Contentious Plan, Chalice, or Steady Progress. Given the amount of proliferation in hand, I think maybe the Everflowing Chalice makes sense. So that is what I decide. We'll play the Chalice. And then we can just go for the Vivisurgeon's Insight to have the most capacity to dig with 1 card. Draw 3 cards. Proliferating onto everything. And I decide to go for, the Deep Analysis here as the biggest, or Lorien Revealed, okay. Still looking for a proliferation. We ended up finding the Inquiry. So we can play our Sappers and Scary and just play the Infectious Inquiry here. If we find an untapped land off of this, then we can start proliferating more. So not playing the Scary there was correct. And I did not. So we'll play the Scary and pass the turn. We have to discard the hand size, so we'll discard Woodlot and Deep Analysis. Still trying to keep the Breath Weapon in hand for fairies and stuff. Now I was hoping that they didn't have a Okiba Gang, but it looks like they do. So what do we want to discard? I think we have so much mana in play that Pentad Prism is okay to get rid of, and the Breath Weapon probably makes sense as well. But I decided to use get rid of the Contentious Plan here. So now I have double ways to get rid of the Okiba Gang. So let's see. Leading on Serrated Arrows, so they have to have straight up Counterspell, and they did not have it. We can ping the Okiba and start going. Contentious Plan, that kills the Okiba Gang. Oh, they have a Counterspell, so they decided not to counter the Serrated Arrows, which surprised me. But we have a second Contentious Plan. Okiba is going to get a counter and die, and we put counters on all of our stuff. Okay, and now we have an Infectious Inquiry, but I want to just draw cards with a Deep Analysis, and then I will play out my Sappers and Scary. Experimental Augury again. No, we're going to lead on Vivisurgeon's Insight. Right. Got to get that raw card draw before the card selection. And they said that they did not expect the Serrated Arrows to be wrecking them, or just all the extra stuff that I had. Okay, and now we have tons of mana. So I think that I'm going to tap the Chalice, play another Chalice, and now this Chalice can start growing. We can use a blue, play Experimental Augury, or play a Steady Progress. They have a Dispel. Now we can Augury, grabbing that Insight. Love my draw 3s here. It's too sweet. Storm is 10. How is this not a combo deck? All right. We are going to use our mana because we have 2, 3, 4, 5, and cast Vivisurgeon's Insight. Sweet. They go to 5 poison. I really don't need to proliferate the lands here, but I end up doing it. And now I have this Experimental Augury as a 0. Basically, it doesn't cost me anything. So I'll just use the mana, Experimental Augury, finding Deep Analysis, Chalice, or Prism. So I just want to take the Deep Analysis because it's the most card draw I could use. Proliferate onto everything and pass the turn. All right, what are you going to do, opponent? Plays a Fairy Seer. Okay. Scry's bottom 2. Augur of Boros. Finds Agony Warp. Unfortunately, they didn't have any cuts to cut it. Okay. So they have potentially Counterspell plus Spellstutter Sprite. We're going to lead on 1 Infectious Inquiry. If they have Counterspell, that would be their 3rd Counterspell. They did not have the Counterspell. I decided to tap the Chalice and play out another Serrated Arrows. See if they want to counter that. If I find some proliferation, I can start just like taking out their whole board here. Love me some Serrated Arrows. Let's cast this Infectious Inquiry. They go to 8 poison. They don't counter it. They don't counter. We don't have any proliferation in hand or poison. And you'll notice that right now we're at 12 cards in deck. So I'm trying to win this turn, but we'll see what happens. We have a lot of mana in play. I've drawn basically my entire deck. I'll cast Lorien Revealed. Still don't draw any poison. Okay, let's keep looking. Tap my Chalice. I figured drawing 3 cards off the Lorien Revealed keeps more cards in my deck. So let's draw 3. All right. There's my proliferation. We have 6 cards left in the deck. We only need to resolve 2 proliferates. Draw 3 again. No counter. I say, I think this is GG. We draw into 2 more proliferates, so we do end up just casting. I decided to go for Ping on the Augur of Boros and proliferate. And we win! 10-0. Can you believe it? We did not lose a single game. And here we are with the deck itself. I really, really like this. I think that it just has so much power with tons of card draw. And I think having Breath Weapon as my additional copies of Weather the Storm versus Mono Red has been really, really good. Obviously, we got a little bit lucky versus the Boros player versus the red player, but I think that it goes from a very poor matchup to an even. And I have had a lot of 4-1s. Obviously, I had double trophy with this deck. I've had more trophies with this than with familiars in the recent meta, which is wild, but this has just like been on my mind. Let me know if you think this is a combo deck. Let me know what you think about the list. Make sure to check out the Patreon if you want to get the sideboard guide, and hashtag still listening. We'll see you in the next video.